The church stood silent as a tomb. Sunlight filtered through stained glass, casting jeweled patterns across Elena's white satin gown, a dress that now felt like a shroud. The scent of fresh lilies hung thick in the air, cloying and funereal. She stood frozen at the altar, her bouquet trembling in her grip, petals already falling to the marble floor like tears. Nathan wasn't coming. The hollow silence expanded, pressing against the vaulted ceiling, filling every corner of the sanctuary. 200 pairs of eyes bored into her back. Elena could feel them, the weight of their pity crushing her chest until she could scarcely breathe. Her mother's stifled sob from the front pew sliced through the quiet like a blade. "Perhaps he's been delayed," the priest murmured, his words falling dead in the still air. Elena's vision blurred. The carefully arranged altar flowers, the gleaming candelabras, the ornate golden cross, all of it swam before her eyes, distorted by unshed tears. She had spent 18 months planning this moment. Every detail perfected. Every contingency accounted for. Except this one. Her phone had chimed just once that morning. A text. 3 words that shattered her world, *I can't. I'm sorry, *. Now she stood before God and everyone she'd ever known, abandoned. Humiliated. The diamond ring on her finger felt suddenly cold and foreign, like a shackle rather than a promise. "We should." The priest began again, but Elena couldn't hear him over the roaring in her ears. Blood rushed to her face, hot and shameful. Her knees threatened to buckle. The murmurs had begun now, hushed, scandalized whispers rippling through the pews like poison. "This isn't happening. This cannot be happening, *. But it was. The minutes ticked by, each one another nail in the coffin of her dignity. 5 minutes late became 15. 15 became 30. The truth was undeniable now. Nathan had fled, leaving her to face the wreckage alone. Elena finally turned, forcing herself to look at the assembled guests. Her gaze fell first on her parents, her mother weeping quietly, her father's face a mask of barely contained fury. Then to Nathan's parents, their expressions a complex mixture of mortification and confusion. And then to him. Caleb. Nathan's older brother. Unlike the others, Caleb wasn't whispering or averting his eyes. He sat perfectly still in the front row, his gaze unwavering. Where Nathan was golden and effortlessly charming, Caleb was all quiet intensity, darker, more weathered. His jaw was set in a hard line, his eyes reflecting a storm of emotions Elena couldn't quite decipher. Beside him sat his daughter, Lily, 5 years old and resplendent in her flower girl dress. She clutched her small basket of rose petals, confusion evident on her small face as she looked between the adults for explanation. When Elena's eyes met Caleb's across the church, something passed between them, an unspoken understanding. He knew. Somehow, he had known this would happen. The realization struck her like a physical blow. Had everyone seen what she had been too blind to see? The moment stretched, taut as a wire. Then Caleb moved. He leaned down, whispered something to Lily, and gently placed her hand in his mother's. Then he stood, the motion drawing every eye in the church. His steps were measured, deliberate as he walked down the aisle toward Elena. The whispers crescendoed. Elena felt rooted to the spot, unable to move as Caleb approached the altar. He paused before the steps, looking up at her with those storm-dark eyes. "May I?" he asked quietly, gesturing to the space beside her. Elena nodded, a barely perceptible movement. What else could she do? Caleb climbed the steps and turned to face the congregation. The church fell silent once more, anticipation hanging heavy in the air. What could he possibly say that would salvage this catastrophe? "My brother," he began, his voice steady and clear, "is not coming today." A collective intake of breath swept through the church. "And I want to tell you why." Elena's head snapped toward him, panic flaring in her chest. What was he doing? Nathan left because he was afraid. Afraid of commitment, afraid of responsibility, afraid of being the man Elena deserves. Caleb's words rang out, filling every corner of the sanctuary. I know this because I've spent my life watching him run when things get difficult. I've spent my life cleaning up his messes. He turned slightly toward Elena, his expression softening. But not this time. This time, I'm not here to make excuses for him. I'm here to do what he couldn't. Caleb took a deep breath, then did the unthinkable. He knelt before her, taking her trembling hand in his. Elena, he said, his voice lower now but no less resolute, you deserve better than what my brother did today. You deserve someone who recognizes your worth, who would never leave you standing alone. The church was utterly silent, 200 people collectively holding their breath. I'm not asking you to marry me, Caleb continued, and Elena felt a strange pang at his words. But I am asking you to let me help you walk out of here with your head held high. Not as a victim, but as someone who was brave enough to face the truth, even when it came at the worst possible moment. He stood, still holding her hand. Nathan doesn't deserve your tears. And these people, he gestured to the congregation, don't deserve a show at your expense. Then he turned to address the stunned audience. There will be no wedding today. But there will be no shame either. Anyone who wants to gossip about what happened here can answer to me. Anyone who wants to support Elena in this moment can join us at the reception hall, where the food and drink you've all been anticipating will still be served. Consider it a celebration of honesty and new beginnings instead. A murmur rippled through the church, but this time it carried a different tone, one of respect, perhaps even admiration. What do you say? Caleb asked Elena quietly. Shall we face them together? Elena looked into his eyes so like Nathan's in color but utterly different in substance. Where Nathan's gaze had always skimmed over surfaces, Caleb seemed to see straight through to her core. Yes, she whispered, finding her voice at last. Together. Loyalty isn't about standing by someone when things are good, it's about picking up the pieces when someone else breaks them. Have you ever had someone step up for you when you were at your lowest? Tell us your story in the comments. The reception hall looked exactly as Elena had envisioned it, white roses cascading from crystal vases, champagne flutes gleaming in the afternoon light, the three-tiered wedding cake a masterpiece of sugar and artistry. Everything perfect, except for the groom-shaped hole in the proceedings. Surprisingly, most guests had come. Some out of morbid curiosity, no doubt, but many seemed genuinely concerned for her. Caleb had not left her side, his steady presence a bulwark against the tide of sympathetic glances and awkward conversations. You didn't have to do this, Elena said as they stood in a quiet corner, watching Lily twirl in her flower girl dress for an appreciative audience of elderly relatives. Yes, I did, Caleb replied simply. Why? He was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. Do you remember when we were kids? That summer at the lake house? Elena nodded. The Reeves family had owned a cabin on Lake Champlain where they spent every August. Her family had the neighboring property. That was how she'd first met Nathan, and Caleb. There was that day Nathan took your father's boat out without permission, Caleb continued. Hit a rock and damaged the hull. I remember, Elena said softly. You told everyone you did it. Caleb's mouth quirked in a half-smile. Nathan was 14. I was 17. I figured I could handle the consequences better. You've always protected him. It became a habit. His expression darkened. But there are some things you can't, shouldn't, protect people from. Their own choices. Their own cowardice. A waiter passed with champagne. Caleb took 2 glasses, handed one to Elena. To facing the truth, he said, raising his glass. Even when it hurts, she finished, clinking her glass against his. As the afternoon wore on, Elena found herself watching Caleb with his daughter. Lily had been born during Caleb's brief marriage to a woman who decided, 3 years in, that motherhood and small-town life weren't for her. She'd moved to Seattle, leaving Caleb to raise their daughter alone. Yet there was no bitterness in the way he spoke of her to Lily, no resentment in how he managed his responsibilities. So different from Nathan, who viewed obligations as constraints to be avoided. "She's beautiful," Elena said, joining them as Lily showed off her dancing skills. Like her mother, Caleb replied automatically, then looked embarrassed. "Sorry. Don't be. It's true." Elena knelt down to Lily's level. "You're the prettiest flower girl I've ever seen." Lily beamed. "Uncle Nathan didn't come to the wedding. Daddy says he got scared." "That's right, sweetheart," Caleb said, his hand gentle on his daughter's shoulder. "But Daddy's not scared of anything," Lily declared with absolute certainty. Elena looked up at Caleb, saw the flush creeping up his neck. "Is that true?" she asked. "You're not scared of anything?" Their eyes met, and for a moment, something electric passed between them. "No," he said quietly. "That's not true at all." The phone calls began that evening. Elena's mother, frantic with worry. Her friends, bubbling with indignation on her behalf. Nathan's parents, mortified and apologetic. And finally, Nathan himself. Elena stared at his name on her phone screen, sitting alone in her apartment surrounded by luggage packed for a honeymoon that would never happen. "Hello?" she answered, her voice steadier than she felt. "Elena." Nathan's voice was ragged. "I'm so sorry. I panicked. I couldn't. Where are you?" A pause. "Chicago. I took a flight this morning. 500 miles away." He'd been planning his escape while she was getting her hair done. Why? The question that had been burning in her chest all day. Another pause, longer this time. "I don't know if I ever really loved you the way you deserve," he finally said. "I thought I did, or I wanted to. But when it came down to it, I just couldn't see our future clearly. And I was too much of a coward to tell you before today. The truth, at last." It should have devastated her. Instead, Elena felt something unexpected, relief. "Your brother stood up for me today," she said. "Caleb?" Nathan sounded surprised. "What did he do?" "The right thing," Elena replied. "Something you might want to learn about." She ended the call, set down the phone, and for the first time since that morning, she cried. Not for the loss of Nathan, she realized, but for the loss of the future she'd thought she wanted, a future that had never really existed except in her imagination. 3 days later, Elena was sorting through wedding gifts that needed to be returned when her doorbell rang. Caleb stood on her porch, looking uncertain. "I brought coffee," he said, holding up a cardboard tray. "And I thought you might need help with everything." Elena stepped back to let him in. "Where's Lily?" "With my parents. They're trying very hard to make up for raising one son who turned out to be a complete ass." That startled a laugh out of her, the first real laugh since the wedding day. They worked in companionable silence, cataloging gifts, writing down names and addresses. Caleb's handwriting was neat and precise, another contrast to Nathan's careless scrawl. "He called me," Caleb said eventually. "Nathan." Elena looked up from the crystal vase she was rewrapping. "What did he say?" "That he's staying in Chicago. Starting over." Caleb shook his head. "He always thinks he can outrun his problems." "And you?" "I face mine. Sometimes too directly for my own good." He met her gaze. "Elena, there's something I should tell you." Her heart quickened inexplicably. "What is it?" Caleb set down his pen, his expression serious. "I've always," he stopped, seemed to reconsider his words. "I've always thought you were too good for him." The admission hung in the air between them, weighted with unspoken implications. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" Elena asked softly. "He's my brother. And you chose him. Caleb's shoulders lifted in a slight shrug. It wasn't my place. And now? Now. He looked down at his hands, then back up at her. Now I think we both deserve some time. You to heal. Me too. He trailed off. To what? To figure out if what I feel for you is real, or if I've just been carrying around an idea of you all these years. The honesty of it struck her like a physical blow. How different from Nathan's easy compliments and effortless charm. I'd like that, Elena said. Time. Caleb nodded, relief evident in his expression. Maybe we could start with coffee. Real coffee, not just as an excuse to check on you. I'd like that too. As he left that evening, Elena stood in her doorway watching him walk to his truck. The setting sun caught in his dark hair, illuminating edges she'd never noticed before. He turned back once, raised a hand in farewell. Elena waved back, feeling something unfamiliar unfurling in her chest, not the breathless infatuation she'd felt with Nathan, but something quieter. Something that felt, unexpectedly, like the beginning of truth. That night, Elena dreamed of summers at the lake house. Not the recent summers with Nathan, but earlier ones, when they were all younger. In her dream, she was 16 again, sitting on the weathered dock with her legs dangling in the cool water. The memory was so vivid she could almost smell the pine trees and feel the rough wood beneath her palms. Mind if I join you? She'd turned to find Caleb standing there, 19 and serious, a dog-eared paperback tucked under his arm. Not handsome in the conventional way Nathan was, but striking, all sharp angles and quiet intensity. It's a free dock, she'd replied, scooting over to make room. They'd sat in companionable silence as the sun set over the lake, turning the water to liquid gold. Nathan was off somewhere with his friends, probably sneaking beers and flirting with summer girls. But Caleb had chosen to sit with her, reading Hemingway while she sketched the landscape in her journal. You're good, he'd said, glancing at her drawing. You see things others don't. The compliment had warmed her more than it should have. But even then, her eyes had been drawn to Nathan, golden, laughing Nathan who lit up every room he entered. Elena woke with a start, the dream memory fading. How had she forgotten that moment? And how many others like it had she overlooked, dazzled by Nathan's more obvious charms? The next morning brought a fresh wave of calls and texts. Elena's phone buzzed incessantly with notifications from well-meaning friends and curious acquaintances. Each message required a response, a careful balance of dignity and vulnerability that left her emotionally drained by noon. When Caleb called, it was almost a relief. How are you holding up? He asked, his voice a low rumble through the speaker. I've been better, Elena admitted. Everyone wants details. It's exhausting. I can imagine. A pause. Listen, Lily's been asking about you. Would you like to join us for dinner tonight? Nothing fancy, just pizza at my place. No pressure to talk about anything you don't want to. The invitation caught her off guard. I don't know if I'm ready for company. Fair enough, Caleb said, no hint of disappointment in his tone. The offer stands whenever you are ready. After they hung up, Elena found herself staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her skin looked pale and drawn. The woman who had spent months preparing to be a radiant bride now looked like a ghost of herself. This isn't me, she thought suddenly. This broken, hiding person, this isn't who I am. Before she could reconsider, she picked up her phone and called Caleb back. Actually, she said when he answered, pizza sounds perfect. Caleb's house was nothing like the sleek downtown condo Nathan had shared with Elena. It was a modest craftsman on a tree-lined street, with a porch swing and a small, well-tended garden. The kind of home that spoke of roots and permanence, concepts Nathan had always seemed allergic to. Lily answered the door, her face lighting up when she saw Elena. You came, she exclaimed, grabbing Elena's hand and pulling her inside. Daddy said you might be too sad, but I told him pizza makes everything better. Your daughter is very wise, Elena said to Caleb, who appeared in the hallway wiping his hands on a dish towel. Wise and stubborn, he agreed with a fond smile. A dangerous combination. The evening unfolded with unexpected ease. They ate pizza at the kitchen table, Lily dominating the conversation with elaborate stories about her kindergarten adventures. Caleb listened with genuine interest, asking questions and laughing at her dramatic renditions of playground politics. Elena found herself watching their interactions, struck by the natural rhythm between father and daughter. Where Nathan had always seemed uncomfortable around children, Caleb moved through fatherhood with quiet confidence. After dinner, Lily insisted on showing Elena her room, a cheerful space filled with books and art supplies. Daddy built me this bookshelf, she announced proudly, pointing to a beautifully crafted piece against one wall. And he reads to me every night, even when he's super tired. That's because books are magic, Caleb said from the doorway. And bedtime is in 15 minutes, pumpkin. Later, after Lily was tucked in and the kitchen cleaned, Elena and Caleb sat on the porch swing, mugs of tea warming their hands against the evening chill. You're good with her, Elena said. Being a single dad can't be easy. Caleb's expression softened. Hardest job I've ever loved. After Megan left. He paused, choosing his words carefully. It was rough at first. I was angry, felt like I'd failed somehow. But you didn't. No. Some things just aren't meant to be, no matter how much you want them to work. He glanced at her. Sorry, probably not what you need to hear right now. Actually, it's exactly what I need to hear. Elena took a sip of her tea. How did you know? That it wasn't going to work with Megan? Caleb was quiet for a long moment. I think I always knew, deep down. We wanted different things. She saw Lily and me as limitations. Obstacles to the life she really wanted. And Nathan saw commitment the same way, Elena murmured. Nathan and I, we're not as different as people think, Caleb said, surprising her. We both run from things. I just run toward responsibility instead of away from it. Neither approach is particularly healthy. The swing creaked gently as they rocked, the rhythm soothing. Do you remember that summer when Nathan broke his arm showing off on the rope swing? Elena asked suddenly. Caleb laughed. God, yes. He was trying to impress you. Was he? I always thought he was trying to impress those girls from the resort. No, it was definitely you. Caleb's smile faded slightly. It was always you, for him. In his way. His way just wasn't enough. The admission felt like setting down a heavy burden she'd been carrying for years. No, Caleb agreed softly. It wasn't. The next day, Elena forced herself to face the apartment she'd shared with Nathan. She needed clothes, toiletries, the everyday items of her life that couldn't remain in limbo forever. The space felt both familiar and foreign, like returning to a childhood home after years away. Everything was exactly where it had been, and yet nothing was the same. Nathan's presence lingered in the leather jacket thrown over a chair, the expensive whiskey on the bar cart, the sleek modern furniture he'd insisted on. Elena moved through the rooms methodically, packing what was undeniably hers. As she worked, memories surfaced, some good, many revealing patterns she'd willfully ignored. The weekends Nathan disappeared for business trips that required no reports on Monday. The way he changed the subject whenever she brought up children or long-term plans. The subtle criticisms disguised as helpful suggestions. How did I miss so many signs, she wondered, folding a sweater into her suitcase. Her phone buzzed with a text from Caleb, "How's it going?" The simple question brought unexpected tears to her eyes. She typed back, "Harder than I expected. But necessary, asterisk." His response came quickly, "Some things are like that. Call if you need anything, asterisk." Elena sat on the edge of their bed, and let herself remember another moment from the past. She'd been 22, fresh out of college and attending the Reeves family Christmas party. Nathan had brought a date, some model he'd met at a club, and Elena had spent the evening pretending not to care, nursing a glass of wine in the kitchen while the festivities continued in the living room. Caleb had found her there, his tie loosened, looking as out of place at the glitzy gathering as she felt. "Not enjoying the party?" he'd asked, leaning against the counter beside her. "Not particularly," she'd admitted. "Your brother seems happy." Caleb had studied her face. "Nathan doesn't know what he wants. Never has. And you do?" "I'm getting there." He'd held her gaze a beat too long before adding, "Some of us take the scenic route to figuring things out." The memory faded as Elena's phone rang, Nathan's mother, calling for the third time that day. With a deep breath, Elena answered, ready to face another piece of the aftermath. A week after the wedding that wasn't, Elena met Caleb for coffee at a small cafe downtown. He was already there when she arrived, a folder of papers on the table beside his cup. "What's all this?" she asked, sliding into the seat across from him. "The final guest list, with addresses," he said. "I thought it might help with the thank you notes. Or the sorry for the inconvenience notes, whatever you decide to send." The thoughtfulness of the gesture caught her off guard. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to." He pushed the folder toward her. "How are you really doing, Elena?" She considered the question, realizing with some surprise that her answer was honest. "Better. Not good yet, but better. That's something." "It is." She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. "I keep thinking about what you said at the church. About Nathan being afraid." Caleb nodded, waiting for her to continue. "I think I was afraid too," she admitted. "Afraid of being alone. Afraid of starting over at 32. Afraid that if Nathan wasn't the one, then I'd wasted years of my life on the wrong person." "You didn't waste anything," Caleb said firmly. "Every relationship teaches us something, even the ones that end badly." "What did yours teach you?" Elena asked, genuinely curious. Caleb's expression turned thoughtful. "That love isn't enough without compatibility. That I'd rather be alone than with someone who resents the life I've chosen." He met her eyes. "That sometimes the hardest path leads to the place you're meant to be." Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition of shared understanding that transcended their complicated history. "Nathan called again yesterday," Elena said. "He wants to meet, to explain himself properly. Are you going to?" "I don't know." She traced the rim of her cup with one finger. "Part of me thinks I deserve that closure. Another part thinks it doesn't matter anymore, that the explanation won't change anything." "Both parts are right," Caleb said. "You do deserve whatever would help you move forward. But you don't owe him your time or attention if it won't serve that purpose." Elena studied his face, the strong line of his jaw, the tiny scar above his eyebrow from a childhood accident, the depth in his eyes that Nathan had never possessed. How had she never truly seen him before? "What?" he asked, noticing her scrutiny. "I'm just wondering what would have happened if I'd met you first," she said softly. "Before Nathan." Caleb's expression remained carefully neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. "We can't rewrite the past, Elena." "No," she agreed. "But we can write the future, can't we?" He reached across the table then, his fingers brushing hers in a touch so light it might have been accidental. But Elena knew it wasn't. And as their hands met, she felt something new taking root, not the dizzying infatuation she'd mistaken for love with Nathan, but something steadier. Something with the potential to grow into something real. "Yes," Caleb said, his voice low and certain. "We can write the future. One page at a time." Outside the cafe window, autumn leaves danced on a gust of wind, red and gold against a clear blue sky. A season of change. A season of beginnings disguised as endings. Elena turned her hand over, her fingers intertwining with Caleb's. And for the first time since she'd stood abandoned at that altar, she felt not just resignation or acceptance, but genuine hope. Some broken things, she was beginning to understand, shattered in exactly the right way to let the light in. Did this story make you emotional? If yes, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, but it helps us reach more people who love heartfelt stories about family, hope, and resilience.